Today on the podcast, we're speaking to Nzingha Stewart. If you have been binging or watching anything over the last 2 years, I guarantee that Nzingha's fingers have been in the project. She is in the Shondaland world with Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. She works with Hello Sunshine on Little Fires Everywhere, and most recently, Daisy Jones and the Six. She was the director of Made and Inventing Anna. She is just a delight and a talent. And if you have any questions about being brave and being strong and how to act on set, you're going to find your answers here. We hope you really enjoy this episode with Nzingha.
It's so nice to meet you.
You as well.
I love your background. You look like you're at in the polo lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Thank you. I feel like I look like I'm in the Golden Girls.
Okay, we'll give you the polo lounge. Are you in LA or are you in Miami?
I am in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Okay.
Just have a Golden Girls aesthetic.
I like it.
I like it. I was talking to someone this week, and we were talking about our love of mysteries and like easy mysteries. And I was reading this book, and they called them cozy mysteries, and we were like, that's what we like Murder, She Wrote style. And so I'm like, again, this old lady vibe where I'm watching Murder, She Wrote and calling them cozy mysteries. It was we all want that cozy feeling. So
it's TV comfort food.
Exactly. Well, and Nzingha, thank you so much for joining us and for taking the time to be with Women in Entertainment. We are so excited to get to know you a little better and hear your story about all of these. I said my binge watching of the last year has been all your world. So thank you very much. When we started doing, I'm like, oh my God, she did that. Oh my God, she did that. All the things that I've been watching, you had your hands in. So it's been. I hope it's been as fun for you as it has been for us as viewers.
It has been, and thank you. It does feel a little bit like when you're in it, you don't know how people will receive it, and then looking back, you're like, wow, somehow these shows have all hit a particular part of the cultural zeitgeist. So
right.
Happy to be asked.
I want to hear in depth about Inventing Anna and if you met her and all of that, but we'll get to that in a minute. I'm a little obsessed with all of the kooky stuff she's doing now in real life. But we want to hear your story. Your career speaks for itself. You've got these amazing projects. You're working with these amazing women like Shonda and Betsy and Hello Sunshine. But will you take us back a little bit on kind of your creative upbringing, your creative process when you knew you wanted to live in this world?
There was never really a time that I didn't want to be a director. I just didn't always know that's what it was called. So I was directing plays with my little brothers when I was 8 that I wrote, and didn't know until there's a moment when I was around 12 where I was mounting my production, and my aunt said, "What does our director have for us today?" And I was like, "That's a job." And it was and I never wanted to do anything else. I didn't always want to be in narrative film.
Oh,
I did start in music videos and loved it, and felt like anytime somebody who was like competition did a movie, I was like, thank God, I don't have to worry about that person anymore. And it didn't occur to me like that was something I was ultimately going to do. I felt like it was so experimental and sort of just spoke the language of taste, which I thought was fun, and I felt fluent in, which I guess everybody in their 20s feels that way. And then there just came a point where everything was changing in the music industry, and where it went from 25 labels to 3, and budgets dropped, and LimeWire and Napster, everything went crazy.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I was doing a shoot, and the artist wouldn't come out of their trailer, and it was a whole thing. And I just was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. It just was sort of I didn't exactly know how to go about film. I just felt like I, I think I've done everything I want to do in this space as an artist. And at the same time, I discovered a book that I fell in love with and started to adapt that. I didn't end up directing it. It got made, but another director made the movie. But just going
Okay.
through that process really felt like this is what I want to do. And then it was very hard to make the transition from music into film and TV. And I kept feeling like, it's what music videos directors do and like the style we can bring to something is harder to learn than, for example, coverage. Um,
Yeah.
Studios did not feel that way. And so it took a really long time of just knocking on doors and of ultimately like writing something for myself to direct, getting that into the world, which then got me into one of those directing programs, which then got me into Shondaland. And then
Yeah.
from there, I could really dig in and start doing this work.
How did you, just to backtrack a little bit, how did you get into the music videos? Like,
Yeah.
what was that process like? Was that, what was the break that you felt, or the relationship that, kind of catapulted
That
you into that?
was that was definitely another self-generated effort. I went to NYU. I did not go for film. I went for philosophy and Black studies. And so, but I was in a weird program there where you could design your own major and
Hamilton?
you had
I was
access.
an NYU kid.
Right. So I had access to the equipment and I just put up
Yeah.
flyers everywhere. So I was interning at record labels and just said, if you want a music video, I can get equipment for free. Give me a call. And so I did do a lot of music videos for people who paid in cash. And like everyone asked where that money came from. But that did ultimately help a lot because I did learn a certain fearlessness for later because at the beginning stage, if you're doing work for people who pay in cash, you can't mess that up. Like, there will be
Right.
consequences if you
Right.
mess with the money.
Yeah.
And so now when I'm on set, people will say like, "Oh, you're so calm," and it is like I know there's a difference in these stakes and the stakes that started out when I began. So ultimately, it helped. But doing a bunch of music videos like that, very low budget, very cash based, eventually led to me getting to, just somebody hearing about the work and getting to direct a music video for Common that a lot of people responded to. And then from there, like again, it was another one of those things like just you wait and you wait and you wait, and just the one right thing pushes you over the top.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to work with any of the music artists on the film side? I know a lot of the people you work with, like Common and 50 Cent, have moved into film. Have you gotten to work with anyone that you worked with on the film, on the music
I
side?
have. And it's always been like a delight, like people that I've directed in one medium and going into the next. I got to work with Jill Scott. It's funny, on the same picture, it was one of those ones that I wrote and was like, if I can just write something and get something in the world, like that'll help. And the first thing I did was a movie for A&E called, this is so bad, because it used to be called The Vow because it was a book, and I don't remember what they
Right,
changed.
right.
With This Ring was what they changed it to. And Eve was in that, and Jill Scott was in that. I had worked with both of them in music videos, and hadn't seen them in like 10 years. So it was a wonderful reunion. But it was nice to see how both of us grew
Right.
in different mediums.
And now with and like we were kind of joking about at the beginning, I mean, just so much that is out right now. You've had your hands in, and I know they're not all, the creation and the production of them don't follow that same kind of timeline. But how are you choosing projects? Because it seems like there's so much, coming at you that to be part of, or that you're choosing to be part of. What's your kind of filter process now that you have all of these projects coming your way?
I have to feel like it's something that on some level moves me. lately there has been a lot of stuff that comes across my desk that, your agents are always like, but it's a go project, it's happening, and it has this person attached to it. And I will sometimes say, but I just don't feel anything. Like I read it, it exists, but like, and I know people need content, so a thing is being made, but if I personally don't feel it, I don't know what I can bring to it. And
Yeah.
um, I have made the decision sometimes, like, I need to do this job for money. Like, I have been in that place before. And I have learned, like, when you work for money, you earn every penny. Like, it is, it is like, I got to wake up. I got to do this thing. I don't feel a sense of joy. And I
Mhm.
really said to myself recently, never again. I can't do it. It's got to be for love. I've got to find my way into it. And it has to make me personally feel something, because that's my gauge on set for if a scene is working. It's like, do I personally feel moved by what this actor has just done?
Mhm.
And so that's been the biggest thing. And it does sort of go to show that, like, the things that move you do tend to move other people. And so, it's felt like a bit of luck that I've gotten to do these really cool limited series and pilots, but it really does come from that space of like, well, I liked it. And so other people like it as well.
In terms of the projects that really resonate with you, do you find that you're picking and choosing projects based on where you're at within your, what stories resonate with you, at any given time, or what are the storylines that are attracting you, or at this point?
It's funny, it's not really like a requirement that something is female driven or female
Yeah.
led, or even that you would get to work with, sort of a round table of women. But I have been attracted to that, and I partially feel like it's like, I remember when we did From Scratch in Italy, we had this amazing crew, and I was like, wow, I didn't know my crew here would be so fantastic. And our DP, who was German, said, yeah, it's because in America, like, everybody's fighting for the same good crew, but here it's a little bit slower, so you get really top tier people. And I sort of feel like that's what it's like working in with women led projects, is that because we're not getting tons of money and theatrical releases, like, some really great, interesting projects are out there in the limited series space for women. And so a lot of the times I certainly get projects that there's a male number one on the call sheet. Those almost tend to be the leftovers from what theatrically didn't get made. Like, the stuff for women is like meaty and like would have been the stuff that 20 years ago would be in the theater and be Oscar bait. So
Mhm.
it's sad that it doesn't have that big theatrical release, but it's wonderful that, like, this is sort of a really golden era for women.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, what does your team look like with, between the different Amazon or Netflix, or working with Shonda, working with others? Are you able to keep a core team together, or have you established that you kind of have your people?
I bounce around. There's definitely people that I love, but again, if I love them, so does everyone else. So,
You have your taste,
so like my two favorite production designers, I sometimes get them. I just got lucky and they're both women. I sometimes get them, and other times, like, somebody else has them. Similar with a first AD, similar with DPs, I like to mix and match and feel like this person, I think, fundamentally gets this material, or this person is more right for this. Um, and there is definitely a factor of I'm learning a lot about men and how they relate to women as artists. And like, now it's also got to be, and they have to know how to work with women. This is not their show where they get to, like, it has to be a true collaboration afforded the same respect that male directors get.
Hmm. Are do most of the production companies and the finance people, to put it bluntly? Do they really let you call the shots on your team and how you put your crew together?
For the most part, yes. I mean, it's interesting. This is again what it is, what the difference is between working with female producers and male producers. I will
Hmm.
say, and this is surprising, it was different in music videos because I was working primarily in hip hop, where a lot of the artists were rappers who were raised by single women. And so there was a certain comfort level that they had with a woman leading the ship. Like they knew in their background, it was just mom, but everybody ate, everybody was off to school on time, bills were figured out. And so there was a sort of an ease with the rappers that when I made the transition, male executives in Hollywood were a new thing for me. Like it was a little bit like, oh, okay. and and once I started working with companies like a Hello Sunshine, they did things entirely different. They definitely let me put together a crew. They obviously had to approve, but for the most part, they were like, we want you to have everything at your disposal to make this job as good as you possibly can. And they, even something like Daisy Jones, which I did not do the pilot of, they felt like it's two giant blocks. There's a first half and there's a second half. We don't want the second half to be less good than the first half.
Right.
So we know it's unusual and episodic to bring your own DP, your own first AD, but we want you to have everything you need to make it feel like it's yours, which is not something I experience in companies that don't have women producers. So it was, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I hadn't experienced it and felt so grateful. And Hello Sunshine has been that way from the beginning with me, where it's like, bring your own team, do whatever you need to. On From Scratch, we did that with the other, because I did 5 of the 8 episodes. Another
Mhm.
woman did 3 of the 8, and it was the same thing. Like, let's give her her own DP, her own first AD. Bring her up to speed on what the vibe of the show is. But let's give people what they feel like they need to have ownership of their work, which has been wonderful.
So the projects that when you talked about ones that you were writing at first, and then mentioning like Daisy Jones, which was a book, and others that do you have how do you when things are coming to you, do you have a preference of how they come to you? If it's a a new narrative, it's a script. You mentioned that you thought you would do more like documentaries, and then you've done books, and you've done some different things. So when the projects are coming to you, have you found that you have like, oh, I love it when it's a book first, or I love it when it's a fresh idea? Do you have a preference, or is it again just the story?
I think it's just the story. With Daisy, I knew that the book was very popular, but I only half listened to the book because my experience on From Scratch was I devoured the book and then kept getting confused on set. Like, is this in the script? Is this in the book? It's 8 episodes you're tracking. It's sometimes like I would give a note and be like, because then this happened, and the actors would be like, what? Like, and I realized, oh, that happened in the book. It doesn't happen in the script anymore. And so with Daisy, I was like, I don't want to make that mistake. So like, I'll listen a little bit and like, but not too closely, like in the shower or something. Um, but I had no preference. It just happened to be books that were really popular. Shockingly, books that are popular get made into movies.
Right, right. And Hello Sunshine is so leading that charge with
Yeah.
everything.
In terms of your style on set, how do you feel, when you go into a new project, how do you kind of find your style and your groove on set with your actors?
I don't usually anymore get as much rehearsal time as I would like. Things are just moving so fast, and I feel like, and this is sad, is that studios, it's almost like they think that part of the process isn't as important as just being on set and so you are tasked with getting these performances out of actors without having had rehearsal time for them to even know what the other actors in the scene are doing, which is difficult. And so I don't think that sometimes our showrunners or producers love this thing that I do. And I'm trying to find a way to adjust where we're both happy. I do like to have just one rehearsal before we do a blocking or marking, before the writers come in, that is just for the actors. It takes about 10 minutes, but that's a lot of time when it's like 4 scenes in a day and everyone's rushing, and it's 40 minutes. And you have 12 hours to accomplish this work, and you know what I mean? And all these scenes. But I find the work from the actors is stronger when I give them that 10 minutes, because there are things they may want to try, but they don't necessarily want to try it in front of an audience. They
Yeah.
want, like, I just want to say this with you and see how that feels. And like, I'll do things to get them not thinking about their preparation. Like, just say the words as fast as you can, just race. And then say them as slow as you can. And like, a lot of times just doing that exercise, there's no pressure. They have fun and they find things just saying the words super slow. But I'm not looking for a performance for just me. I just want to give them freedom for when the time to perform comes. Like, they feel okay trying things. So that's definitely a part of my process. I think I like to keep a very loose village, being sensitive to scenes that I think are sensitive. If it's a scene where I think the actors have to really go to an emotional place, or it's like an intimate scene, I won't keep such a loose village. Like, I will try to keep quiet and give them space to just stay in where they are. If it's not that, I don't ever want the actors to feel the pressure of time that I feel. And I don't ever want them to feel like if notes are coming in, that means they've done anything wrong. So I really try to keep that in the background and like come to them with the spirit of like, that was great. Let's try something new. Or like, I learned something by what you just did. Can we explore that further? But like, during turnarounds, when it's not crazy on set, and again, it's not a sensitive day,
Yeah.
dance parties. People are people are always looking like, we heard you have these great dance parties. I'm like, I do. And I think it really, again, it makes actors feel loose and feel like, oh, this is a place where we play and can try things. So, I do tend, there's of course days where I'm like, I need total quiet because I've got to figure this out, or I can see this isn't the day. You've got to know when to pull out the party bus. Knowing it exists. Like, I think the crew gets involved. Usually after lunch, we'll do it to wake everyone up. Everybody is out there, like, having fun. And then we go into the work, and there's not the tension of, it's a new scene. Now we got to put it back on. It's just like we ease into it and continue that spirit of play.
In the transition from music videos, into some of your first projects, obviously there is a difference in terms of length, in terms of, the quality that you were dealing with and so forth. What was some of your biggest learnings? Like, what were you scared of? What were you, what was the biggest learning that you were like, ugh, or, and that you had to overcome? A lot of our audience are creatives trying to push through some of their insecurities. What were yours as you grew within your roles?
Definitely trusting myself and trusting my gut. I remember the very first music video that I directed for like a real record label. And not like, again, little side hustle business, but like, it was a music video I did for Elektra. And I remember waking up that morning thinking like, what would happen if I just didn't go? Like, maybe this is what I want to do with my life. Like, what if I just didn't show up? Because I was so nervous. And then I get there, and of course, this male director who was pretty established in music videos came by the set and was talking to the label executive and was like, basically talking her up over their next few projects. And I was so insecure with them there, and I felt terrified. And after that, I felt like, I have to learn a way of protecting myself and saying, this may not be the most appropriate time for you to be here. You really should be invited onto my set. And like, that there are boundaries just as in life that you're allowed to set. I didn't know that back then, that you are allowed to say, I need
Yeah.
this, these boundaries established so I can do my best work, so I can think clearly, so that I'm not super nervous. Like, this isn't always, what even like sometimes people will ask to shadow, or, you'll start a new show. When I was in episodic, now I really pretty much only do limited series and pilots. But like, we have the shadowing program. Somebody's going to come shadow you. I didn't know I could say at the time, I'm a new director. It makes me nervous. Can we not do that on mine? Like, now I
Yeah.
don't care. I almost don't even notice. And I will go over to the shadows and be like, is there anything that you saw you have questions about? But in the beginning, it was just like, why are these people watching me? I barely know what I'm doing. And so I had to learn, like, you can set boundaries. You can say, like, that's not good for me right now. And then just trusting yourself, I think. And it's so easy to say that. It seems like a whatever kind of cliche lesson. I now know when I'm at that monitor, it's all I have. If producers or first ADs or whomever comes over and is like, we gotta move, we gotta go, or whatever's have sun's going down, XYZ, to be able to sort of just hold my stomach and say, like, we don't have it. I know we don't have it. And I know you think we have it because all the words were said.
Yeah.
But this is a scene that, like, I have to deeply, I remember in From Scratch, the scene where our male lead is dying. And the producers were like, we got to go. And I'm like, this is a scene that if it doesn't work,
Yeah.
nothing we've done in 8 episodes works. Like, it has to work. We have to feel something. And it was just like, but you've got it. Don't spend that much time. It's all about the number one. And I was like, I'm telling you, we're
Yeah.
gonna regret it. And I can't. And again, in terms of setting boundaries, I'm not moving on. Like, you do whatever you have to do. I'm not moving on. I know we don't have it. And and that is something I wouldn't have said early in my career. I would have been like, okay, well, I guess we have it. Like, but there's a point, you know what you know, and you have to trust that, and you have to stand up for it and be like, you may not ever work with me again, but here's what I do know, because I think women are afraid of that. I remember when I shadowed a woman director early, she said, like, the boys can get away with not making their day, you can't. And it was such a thing for me about making my day. And it still is, because you want to be respectful to your partners. And I remember working with another executive producer who was a woman who was like, she's right-ish. And she was like, what I do know is if you do an amazing episode, that is far preferable to people who will be looking at working with you again, to did a bad episode, but you did it in the amount of allotted hours. Like, sometimes things happen. You have to sort of stand up for the work and feel comfortable in that.
When you read some of the scripts, as you said, like you've moved out of episodic, when you start reading some of the scripts that you're getting, are some of them that you see, just because there's so much content out there now and so many projects that are coming your way, do you ever say, this isn't a miniseries, or this is episodic, or this should be a film, or like, when you're reading things, are you seeing that kind of differentiation on the content that you're receiving and saying, I don't want to do this because this doesn't fit within a miniseries, or this doesn't, how does that look for you in terms of the content that's
There
coming
are
your way?
times when I've read scripts that I felt that I knew what the book was first, and I
Yeah.
felt like this would be much better as a mini series because XYZ.
Yeah.
And I didn't end up doing that project because I felt like it just feels like a highlights checklist. It didn't feel like
Mhm.
things were allowed to breathe, or, but for the most part, no. If I read a script and I respond, and I think this is good writing, or I can do something with this, I'll do it. And again, like I've said, there are times where, like, you just have to do a job and you can't be
Yeah.
that picky. And in that case, I would say to people, it's still your movie. And so even if it's an episode of TV, that hour is your movie. That's your short film. And so you do have to really try to make it your film, and not, I think in the beginning I felt like, you have to do every single thing that's written on the paper, or you'll never work in this town again. And you can't question the showrunner. You can't bring up these things that you see as problematic. You can only ask questions. And I don't do that anymore. Like now, it's even like when I was ending doing episodic, I started to say, you know, I don't know if you need this scene. I think it's better to do it without it. Or I don't know if the scene has a lot of words that feel redundant. Can we? But you get to give notes the same way that you would if it was a feature, like you get, or a pilot. You get to say, I'm having some trouble with this. Like, explain this to me, or like, can we look at this again? I don't know if this is quite working.
Yeah.
And which is something that I've had to learn. Like, you can make it, you still can make it your own.
You mentioned some of the advice that you got as you were starting. Have you had mentors? Have you had men and women who you really can say helped you out and guided you as you've grown through your career?
I haven't. I joke about myself and say that I was raised by wolves, but it's because I really didn't have that sort of shepherd through. I had to sort of trial by fire. There have been people who have left sort of an imprint in either how they conducted themselves or things they have actively told me that have helped my career. Um, or have challenged me to step outside my comfort zone. I know that there was a project I was working on with Neil Marone, who was one of the producers of Some Like It Hot, the Broadway, which is a lot of musical space. And we were going out to pitch, and I was so nervous back then. And I was like, I can't do it. And he was like, you have to. And I was like, but I can't. You and Craig, his partner Craig Zayden at the time, I was like, this is what you do. You've won an Oscar. Like, can you do the pitch for me? I wrote it all up. And they were like, we can. That wouldn't be good for you. And I was like, but we may not sell this if it's on me. And they're like, well, that's okay. This is good for you. And like, it was so wonderful. They sort of forced me to do that. The same I would say of Lauren Neustadter at Hello Sunshine, who was just a force of nature. Lauren has made me do difficult things before that she would be like, this is good for you. Like, you should, as a producer, can fire that person, but you need that experience. And like, it would have been something I mumbled through. And then I come home and she sent me like a steak and lobster dinner and is like, I'm proud of you. Like, there have been women who have just been like, dig deep, you can do this. Like, and you have to at some point.
In terms of what you still get nervous, like what are the things that still make you nervous?
Everything. Because if I'm not a little bit nervous, the job is not interesting to me.
Yeah.
And it's not a job I should be doing. So pretty much every job, that first, I don't think about what would happen if I don't go anymore because I know. But it all makes me nervous. And I am one of those people who have to really talk to themselves in the mirror. I do have to like talk to myself to self-calm. I do have to do the like butterfly hands to like self-soothe. I'm not and this is something that I see with my assistant who wants to become a director. She's in her 20s. She's very, very shy. I will be like Lauren and make her do things that she's uncomfortable with because I know that she needs to. But I also tell her all the time, people think you have to be this confident force when you go in these rooms you don't. Like, you start with what you have. If you're nervous and do it anyway, they're still looking at the work. You're not being tested or graded on your confidence level. It helps with a crew and all those kind of things, but I can tell you a crew would prefer an intelligent person over a super, if they're like, well, I'm nervous to say it, but that doesn't make sense. And it saves them 3 hours of work, they would prefer it. So I don't think you have to come into this like Athena fully formed out of Zeus's head. You can bring like your anxiety, with me, my imposter syndrome, and like, and still do a good job. And if you have to go to the bathroom and talk to yourself, it's fine. Like, it's okay.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I work with a lot of different executives in terms of like media training, things along those lines. And it's so interesting because when people are nervous to present, it's always interesting to think that no one knows what's in your head. No one knows what you're going to say. So you always have to remember you didn't miss out on anything that anybody's going to say, well, you didn't talk about this,
Oh
right? You
yeah.
didn't cover this. You just have to step back and say, I covered what I needed to cover in that meeting, even if it's an initial meeting or an initial presentation or an interview, right? It's no one else is in your head, so it's a matter of how do you calm your nerves in order to hit the points you want to, because no one's going to call you out that you didn't talk about something.
It's so good that you say that though for people pitching, because that was the area where I think I was the most sort of like just overwhelmed. Like when it's almost like even a number, like if it was over five people, like it's going to be a thing for me. Like,
Yeah,
and so, like just saying what you just said, like people won't know what they've missed out on if you miss some things, if
yeah,
be as prepared as possible. It's fine if it's not perfect. Like what's for you will be for you.
yeah. And just it's like when you understand that you know what's in your head or what you want to present, and you just take a breath and you say what you want to say, and recognize that no one's judging you on it.
Right.
You know, it brings your vibration down a little bit just so you can get through it, right?
And I
Yeah.
like your balance of that balance of nervousness and excitement. I always try to think if I'm a little nervous, that means I'm excited. I'm a little excited. You're not kind of numb to it if because it's that nervousness is because it means something to you, which is always good.
And I will say another, Lauren is just on my mind today. Another gem that she's taught me, which she said she got from Reese, is always do the hard thing first.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Whatever it is, if it's like a difficult meeting, a difficult conversation, like get that over with. It's the same approach to filmmaking. Like shoot the hardest scene first, because if you have to race through everything else, it's fine. And it's the same thing in life with these conversations or putting yourself up for a job, or like do the hard thing first, get out the way.
Anticipation is always worse than the actual conversation, and
Right, right.
that feeds into everything, right?
Yeah, and it's less hours of being stressed. Like once you're stressed for 8 hours about it, like it's good for your nervous system. And that is something honestly we don't talk about enough in this business. You have to take care of it. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's, I think the
absolutely.
average life expectancy of first ADs is like 52 or something insane.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
yeah, and like they give us all these resources and we often don't use them because it
Goodness.
feels like we have to power through. Like these are situations that create anxiety. It's you're dealing in human emotion and something that's subjective. You know, you have to like find a way to just take care of yourself in the midst of that.
Do you have things that you do? I love the is it the Wall Street Journal, like what should your Monday morning look like? But do you have those like daily routines that kind of keep you grounded and keep you in touch with yourself?
I do. And it's again, it's one of those things that like I remember it's and antithetical to something I learned earlier on, which I remember this director that I worked with who used to be a first AD once saying to me, always eat lunch with the crew and it makes them see you as one of them, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was gospel until I started to eat lunch by myself in my trailer and realized that for some people what he does, for me, I really do need a quiet space
Mm,
for a part of the day to be. Like to just go
Wow.
someplace, not talk. If it's even my car, if it's like a van, if we're someplace where base is too far, I do need a minute of quiet to just think about like what happened this morning and like what is happening the second half of this day.
Yeah.
To sometimes to just be like, what went right today? Because maybe things felt or like how can I fix whatever, or like I need 15 minutes to take a nap. Like those
mhm.
just a moment of quiet in my day is absolutely essential. um I do like to when I come home after shooting like take a bath, not just a shower, but like start to bring everything down is very helpful for me. I
Yeah.
do like to I'm a big journaler. If something was tough for me, I think writing about it before I go to sleep gets it just out. of my head so I can rest. So
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff, and again, a lot of self-talk. Like I think some women were born like can take on anything and super confident. I am an introverted, extroverted introvert. And so I do
Yeah.
have to like, even out loud, be like, give myself permission. It's okay for you to speak up. It's okay for you to, or like, your voice is valuable in this conversation. Like just saying that to myself, like in fact, they need to hear your voice. Your voice is welcome. Like saying that kind of thing so that I don't sort of shut down because if I don't say it, who will? And I'll know something. And I used to be nervous to say it. The place where I regret it is in the edit room. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and it really had taught me like, you're going to feel it even more if you don't say it on set because then there's no recourse. And so, and there have been times where like there's a writer who might be new to their job and they're on staff and they're tasked with talking to me, where I do sometimes have to say, you're not right. and and I know that because I have done this a lot longer. I'm
Yeah.
not dismissing you, but you're not equipped to give me that note. I don't think you understand the fallout of that note, so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. You want to talk to your boss and we can talk it over. I'm okay with that, but I'm going to stay the course. I didn't know in the beginning you could do that, but you better because, and I've realized it's irresponsible of me not to do that because I know what I know, and sometimes somebody bringing me a note does not. Sometimes a studio executive bringing me a note does not. And I have to really figure out how do I, in a respectful way, be like, this is my job and what you've hired me to do. I know you don't understand the repercussions of me delivering that note to this actor in this time. So I can't do that. But thank you for the suggestion. Or
Having
if we have
this,
time after they've made it through the scene, I'll
right.
take you up on that. But they're in an emotional moment. I can't go futzing with it with this note.
Yeah.
Having the skills to have a difficult conversation, I think, is so underrated in
So
adulthood.
underrated.
Whether you're in business, I mean, you're in, I mean, any business or even your personal life, just being able to have that difficult conversation without emotion, based in fact, it's a real skill. I think that we've all had to learn. But it's like, where can we fit that in? That's taught. Where can we
Yeah.
help the young men and women coming? That is a real skill to learn. And it sounds like you've learned it and you're practicing it and honing it regularly.
I have to learn it every day.
Yeah,
Like it's almost like, quitting smoking. You have to quit smoking every day.
right.
Like, and
Yeah.
so, every day because I was, women in general have not been socialized to have difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But me in particular, it's just not the way that I was taught. And so it is something that every day, even if it's someone I love, like if it's
Right.
my assistant or my AD or someone on my team that I have to pull aside, that's almost harder for me to pull them aside and like be like, I think we need to do a better job here. This isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
That's a harder conversation sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Um, with everything that you have going on, and I don't know if you even have time, tell us what are you loving to watch, and what are we? I just said you filled so much of our time this last over these last months with all of your projects. Tell us what do you enjoy watching or reading, or what content you've enjoyed over these last
What do
months.
you binge?
Yeah, what do you binge?
Well, my husband is from another country. He's from Morocco.
Mm.
They did not have The Sopranos. And so I was like, what? And so I've
How
been
could you live with
rewatching
it?
The Sopranos because once he got through like first two episodes, he's like, I don't think I like it. I was like, well, this isn't going to work between us if you don't. So I think you should give it another try. And so once he got through three, now he's fully binging like 3 episodes a night. So I'm rewatching that, and it is as good as it was then. And I just last night decided to try Poker Face.
Oh,
Delightful.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
I want to watch Mrs. Davis. I have not seen it yet.
Mhm.
Um, and like everyone, I was devastated by Succession going away.
I
Yeah.
know.
But no, I usually come home and like I'm always behind on TV because of work. And I never like to like halfway give my attention to something I might like.
Mhm.
So I'm too sleepy. Like it's usually I will watch like come home from set. I will do a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle because makes my brain not go through like every mistake I made for the day.
Yeah.
And have a glass of wine and put on in the background like Great British Baking Show or RuPaul's Drag Race or like
Right.
something that's just Top Chef, like something that's like easy. If I miss half of it because I'm sleepy, fine. So there's a lot of new TV I want to get into and just haven't yet.
I don't think I think we can safely say in the world now there's no being behind in television
No.
because like you're watching The Sopranos, I'm like, oh, that would be a good one to go
Revisit.
back and revisit exactly. And I just read a really interesting study, and it was talking about on the streaming channels how often older things are watched, and there's such a stress reduction. I'm going to out both Renee and I. We are Gilmore Girl fans.
Crazy, like bring it to us.
Yeah, how often you go back to the Gilmore Girls or to, I mean, Sopranos is a little edgier than that, but just something that you've seen before, because it does bring that, like you said, it's almost in the background, but it brings that comfort down because you're not going to be surprised. You're not going to be, but you have that comfort in those shows.
I did my husband and I did The Sopranos, and we got to like season like 5 or 6, then we were like, okay, we need a break because we're just like, it's too much of like the club and killing it, everything, right? But it's interesting to go back to some of those shows that we all knew on like, in some ways we waited for a week for the episode, and like the stuff that's that was linear, because it's like now you can sit down and be like, wow, I can watch all 10 of these in a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And like you see the storyline, you see the arcs, and you can make these connections that like when you had to wait a week or you had DVR and you're like, wait a second, 3 seconds. So it's like the story changes a little bit, and it feels like it's almost being a little bit more rushed, but you capture more of it because you see the arc all together and you have such respect for it in some ways.
Right. It is sometimes nicer.
And you also know what it's about now. And so you can almost like there's a new reward, and like it's so brilliant how they keep with Sopranos. I was talking to a girlfriend about it, Tembi, who wrote the book from scratch. And she said, like, there was a point where she was like, what is this show about? And she was like, well, it's really about the end of the American Mafia, which I never thought like that was what it was about. But then she said it now as I'm watching all these episodes. I'm like, yes, it's his heartbreak, like that this tradition is ending and dying. And that is exactly what it's about. But it makes every episode rewarding to see the journey to like, that's what it's about.
Yeah. Are there directors that you look up to, or that you look at some of their work and just say, wow, like who are your like director folks that you aspire to be or be around or learn from, or obviously?
I like everybody. A lot of people.
I respect that.
I just saw coming back from Toronto, Sarah Polley's movie, Women Talking.
Oh, right.
I'm sad I saw it on the plane.
That had to be tough on the plane.
Good. And I didn't know what to expect. I just put it on.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I could have watched it again and again, like watched it 3 more times it felt like a play.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept unfolding. I thought it was beautiful. I tend to like directors who I could never be like because they have such a singular voice. I get excited to see, and I know some people are like, oh, it's redundant, or like Wes Anderson, like, he's a caricature of himself. But I feel like how wonderful that he created this language for himself that only he can do, that speaks to his soul, and that's why he gets all these great actors to sign on. Like, they see something there too. I love Sofia Coppola. And going back, Godard, but like these directors that, I mean, honestly, like I don't know if we can say it, but Annie Hall was a favorite.
When you said that about the singular look, and I was like, oh, I can't say it, but he had that world.
Scorsese, Same thing. Spike Lee, same thing. Like there's just
Mhm.
I love those movies because
Yeah.
it's something I'm comparing myself to. Name is escaping me now, but director of Parasite for
Um,
definitely.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But it just like there's just a singularity of voice.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
want to go see this new Nicole Holofcener movie to just
Oh,
she
the yeah,
as well.
the and
Like
that's again the New York, that family that
Yeah.
she creates is amazing.
yeah.
Do you see yourself continuing to write or write more or produce, or is there other are there other
For
pieces
sure.
of the project that you want to get they want to do?
Funny enough, during a writer's strike, I realized how much I missed writing. I because it's quiet, and when you're shooting, like there's
Mhm,
not space for
mhm,
anything else.
mhm.
And so I've sort of thought about this time as like a sacred pause, and not. I think it's bad that it has to happen, and it's ridiculous that it has to happen, but it's not a bad thing to happen to just sort of reset ourselves and think about what we want, and like not just
Yeah.
barreling through. Um, And so I did, the last time this happened was obviously in the pandemic. I wrote a screenplay with a friend of mine who was a script supervisor that I worked with. And me and her were one day just making up an idea on set. And the producer was like, that's actually a really good idea. You guys should write that. And during quarantine, we did. We sold it. And so when the strike is over, I have to finish the rewrite because the studios wants to make this movie top of next year.
Oh
It's
wow.
a passion project. It's five teenage girls in Morocco who become like they wear hijabs and in disguise, like form this motorcycle racing gang for girls. And
Oh,
it just is so much fun being in that world. And like, I know it inside and out because I wrote it,
Uh-huh.
that
yeah.
I was like, I have to do this more
Yeah, you
often.
can't let
You
your
know, so
baby go to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exciting.
okay.
Well, our time has gone so fast. I feel like we've been talking and talking, but thank you so much. I mean, what
It
a
was so
pleasure.
lovely to meet you.
Yeah, and the nuggets you are giving to our audience and our listeners. I mean, you've been very, very generous. Thank you
Thank
so
you so much.
much.
It was wonderful meeting you.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.